Bienvenidos a una sesión más a la ASERSA Open Webinar Series 18, un espacio, como sabéis, organizado por ASERSA y por aguasresiduales.info, donde ponemos en valor la regeneración y la reutilización del agua. Buenas tardes a los que nos seguís desde España y Portugal y muy buenos días a los que lo hacéis desde América Latina y gracias a todos por vuestra asistencia. Antes de darle paso a Rafael Mujeriego, presidente de ASERSA, para que nos presente a los invitados de hoy, permitidme que os comente que hemos tenido un imprevisto de última hora y nuestra primera invitada, la doctora Mihaela Stefan, que nos acompaña, que es Senior Research Scientific de la empresa Trojan Technologies, lleva varios días con una grave afonía que finalmente le impide esta tarde exponer su presentación. Por tanto, pasaremos directamente a nuestro segundo invitado, a Angel Bustamante, director de la División de Aguas Residuales del Paso Water, y que nos hablará del programa de reutilización potable del Paso en el estado de Texas, en Estados Unidos. Aprovecharemos la parte del espacio que nos queda libre para conocer de la mano de Rafael, como os decía, presidente de ASERSA, la campaña de promoción de imagen de la regeneración y la reutilización del agua que la asociación está realizando en España. Como siempre, tras la intervención de nuestro invitado, abriremos la ronda de consulta que nos podréis ir dejando, como siempre, también en la pestaña de preguntas. Os recuerdo que la ponencia de hoy es en inglés, sin traducción, y que le hemos pedido a nuestro invitado que, por favor, hable de forma clara y pausada. Mi compañera Tina estará coordinando el chat para cualquier cosa que necesitéis durante la tarde y el material de hoy lo tenéis en la pestaña de App, en Compartir Medios. Así que, sin más, doy paso a Rafael para que nos presente a nuestro invitado de hoy. Buenas tardes, Rafael. Adelante.
Buenas tardes, José Miguel. Muchísimas gracias. Es una gran satisfacción y un placer personal, un honor estar hoy aquí un día más en este webinario patrocinado por ASERSA con dos invitados de excepción que ahora presentaré con más detalle. Como todos ustedes conocen, este es nuestro webinario número 18, creo que ya es el quinto año, y hemos cubierto un gran territorio, un gran recorrido en todo lo que significa la regeneración y la reutilización del agua. Dicho esto, reitero nuestras disculpas a todos los que nos acompañan hoy aquí por el imprevisto que nos ha surgido con esta afonía de la doctora, que no le va a permitir hacer su presentación como ella quería. Hace unos minutos estábamos probando, pero realmente va a ser un esfuerzo ímprobo y no vale la pena. Prometemos que vamos a posponer, vamos a organizar de nuevo ese webinario, su presentación, en un webinario a posteriori, posiblemente en el mes de septiembre. De modo que no lo vamos a suprimir. Está en cartera, lo vamos a realizar y lo realizaremos previsiblemente en el mes de septiembre. José Miguel, si eres tan amable de pasar mi presentación.
Sí, Rafael, un segundito.
No.
Pero recuerda que hoy no me has pasado la presentación inicial que
sí.
Tener, Rafael.
Sí, la tienes. Te la he enviado.
Pues discúlpame, con las prisas no la hemos cargado, con los problemas técnicos. Así que adelante.
¿La tienes tú ahí o no?
No la tengo.
Pues escucha un segundo, la abro yo aquí y la diré verbalmente.
Perfecto. Disculpa, Rafael, con los problemas técnicos de última hora.
Okay, I'm going to do this welcoming in English so our two guest speakers can follow my words. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to the ASERSA webinar number 18. Thank you for joining us in the first webinar of the 2024 series. The main objective of our webinars is to share and disseminate the most diverse initiatives promoting water reclamation and reuse as an essential component of integrated water resource management. We are very satisfied with the favorable reception, then technical terms such as water reclamation, reclaimed water, water reuse, and even water purification are receiving in our territories. We will continue promoting their use to ensure a correct perception and a larger acceptance of this management strategy by water users and the public at large. The ASERSA webinar number 18 has been possible thanks to the continued support of our 5 sponsor members: the Catalan Water Agency, Veolia Spain and AGUAS de Barcelona. Now they are the same company. The Consorci d'Aigües Costa Brava Girona, and the Sanitation Agency of the Murcia region, together with all our regular members. The interest and support offered by numerous friends, colleagues, and professionals from the water reclamation and reuse field have been equally valuable. They have been willing to share their knowledge and experience with us on how to plan, implement, and operate their water reuse projects under the most diverse environmental, social, and economic conditions. Let me see. Today's webinar includes 2 distinguished guest speakers, experts in the controlling and achieving water quality criteria for indirect and direct potable reuse. As I mentioned before, Dr. Mihaela Stefan, Senior Research Scientist at Trojan Technologies in London, Ontario, Canada, that unfortunately will not be able to make the oral presentation because of her voice is just suffering too much. Then we have, she's in the webinar with us in any case, Mr. Angel Bustamante, the Wastewater System Division Manager in operation for El Paso Water. In spite of the oral absence of Dr. Mihaela Stefan, I want to make a presentation of her so all our audience is enthusiastic and motivated to come back when we reorganize this webinar. Dr. Mihaela Stefan has a PhD in photochemistry and chemical kinetics and 30 years of experience in fundamental and applied research on UV light-induced advanced oxidation processes for micropollutant treatment in water. Dr. Stefan has been directly involved in the piloting and full-scale implementation of UV AOPs at water utilities, advanced oxidation processes. She is the editor of the book, Advanced Oxidation Processes for Water Treatment, Fundamentals and Applications, published by IWA Publishing in London in 2018. Mr. Angel Bustamante has been a consultant on water and wastewater in Orange County, California. It has been with El Paso Water since 2006. He is a registered professional engineer in the states of Texas and California, a licensed wastewater operator in drinking water, and licensed in wastewater treatment from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. We are very interested in sharing Dr. Mihaela Stefan's vision, unfortunately not today, but in the coming weeks, on the methodology widely adopted for removing micropollutants by using UV light in combination with other advanced oxidation processes. We also have a great interest in learning about the planning and implementation process followed by the visionary project of El Paso Water for direct potable water reuse in Texas. And this is my presentation. At this time, it's a great pleasure to give the floor to Angel. Excuse us, Dr. Stefan. You are our most welcome guest, and we will wait for you. Okay, so just take good care of yourself. Angel, please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I very much appreciate this invitation. I'm using my cell phone today to speak with you. I just want to make sure, can everybody hear and see me good?
Your voice comes very, very nicely. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, well, even though many of us are listening around the world, whether it's in Europe or Latin America or in North America, I believe that we have much more in common than we may realize. And so, especially with today's changes and climate change and changing regulatory environment and increase in population throughout the world due to migration or other factors, drinking water is always going to be at the forefront for any type of municipal government to make sure that there's enough drinking water for its people. So I hope today what I tell you resonates with you all because we really do share a lot in common. This presentation is a mixture of some things that I spoke about to the Texas Reuse Association back in February, but I also added some new things for those that are on the call today. So I want to tell you a little bit about El Paso and where we've been and where we're going, and then we can open it up with Q&A. El Paso is considered a large system by the local regulatory association, which is Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Our population is roughly 860,000. However, we are a border city with Ciudad Juarez and Mexico. So combined population with Mexico, and we are on the western edge of Texas, very close to southern New Mexico. Our regional population is approximately 2.6 million. We get very little rainfall, only about 10 inches per year. And I definitely want to respect, conversions and units around the world. That not everybody uses English units. So I did my best to convert to metric. That's roughly about 250 millimeters of rainfall every year. We're considered a surface water system. We get our surface water from a river, the Rio Grande River. However, that river only flows during certain months of the year. It's not continuous. We have 2 surface water plants, 2 groundwater plants, including a desalination plant where the source water is brackish groundwater. And our wastewater system consists of 2,400 miles of pipeline, 70 lift stations. We also operate 3 conventional activated sludge plants and 1 indirect potable reuse plant. And I'm going to highlight a couple of these things later on in my presentation. Next slide, please.
Yes.
So this is a snapshot of El Paso's water supply. For any given year, El Paso approximately produces about 40 billion gallons of drinking water. That equates roughly to about 150 cubic hectometers per year. Angel, where does El Paso Water get their drinking water from? We have 2 groundwater bolsons. They're the local aquifers here. They supply roughly about 70% of our local demand, and surface water supply is about 30% of the demand. And purified water is next, and I will go into great detail on that the next slide. This is our water supply portfolio. Going from the top, from left to right, we have groundwater, the 2 bolsons I mentioned, surface water. Desalination, we can roughly produce about 28 million gallons per day of desalinated water. We have a very extensive history in non-potable reuse. That's the purple pipe or the purple pumps that you see there in the lower left-hand corner. Indirect potable reuse has been done since 1985 at our Fred Hervey water reclamation plant. And I always include this on the list, conservation, right? I believe many of us in the audience are engineers, managers. We may work for a municipal government. And it's important, especially if we're in a drought, if we're in a desert environment like we are here in El Paso and West Texas, to really convey that message to our customers. They already know that. However, I think it's good for continuous improvement to remind our community, hey, we don't we don't live in a place that has excessive water. There are some places around the world that are maybe surrounded by water, but if you're in a desert environment like Spain or maybe different parts of Latin America, I've heard that different parts of Brazil have been experiencing drought, where even rivers have dried up. Here in Texas and different places of the western United States, Arizona, New Mexico, we're all in drought. So it's important to remind our customers conservation is key. Here in El Paso, our rough per capita usage, which is per person per day, is about 128 gallons per person per day. Next slide, please. Okay, so non-potable reuse. This is water that we've been able to reclaim back from our wastewater treatment plants and use it for beneficial reuse. We've been doing this since the early 1960s. These are some pictures of our reclaimed water infrastructure that we have here in El Paso. And we're primarily using the reclaimed water for cooling water for industrial purposes. We're using it to supply water for irrigation, for parks and schools. And so all of this helps because it just reduces the demand on the drinking water supply. We roughly every year supply about 700 million gallons total water to these different types of parks or fields or schools to supply them with irrigation waters. We've been doing that here in El Paso since the early 1960s. Next slide, please. This is a picture actually of the plant that I'm working at today, which is the Haskell R Street wastewater treatment plant. And you know, many people our customers in general may think of water that goes down the sewer from people's homes into the wastewater plant as water that they would never think possible to reuse. However, now with the strategy of One Water and trying to utilize wastewater, I think it's important to tell our customers that it is not just a waste product, that they have to look at it as a resource, as a potential water resource, possibly for beneficial reuse, possibly for indirect or even direct potable reuse. So these are pictures here of the plant. The picture on the left shows our sand filtration, which reduces the turbidity in the water, and the picture on the right shows our secondary clarifier. On average, here at the plant, our total suspended solids leaving the plant are roughly in the neighborhood of 3 milligrams per liter, and under the sand filter, they're less than 1 milligram per liter. So very good water to possibly use to feed an indirect or a potable treatment plant. And it's also important to remind our customers, I like to do this all the time, that wastewater is approximately 99.9% water. Okay, so it's only 0.1% solids. That's a tremendous amount of water. I think that's a very good message to tell our communities. Next slide, please, Rafael. This is our Fred Hervey water reclamation plant. I'm going to show you a slide coming up that shows a map of all of our different plants around El Paso. We've been operating this plant since 1985. It's a very special plant. It's found in many college textbooks. It was in my wastewater treatment plant textbook that I studied for undergraduate school, and it has advanced treatment. And if you're ever here in El Paso, if you ever get the chance to visit, please look me up. Please try to make a visit to the plant. It is very famous. A lot of people like to visit this plant, and we like to showcase it. Next slide, please. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the plant. This is the site. As you can tell from the topography, it is a desert environment here in El Paso. It gets very hot. We have kind of looking, I know this screen shows a lot of things, but looking generally from the top of the screen to the bottom, we have our equalization ponds, and then kind of scanning down this entire slide, we have our our preliminary treatment, which is grit removal, primary clarification, first and second stage clarification, which is used for biological nutrient removal, and then the water enters the drinking water portion of the plant, which consists of lime softening, where the pH is raised, recarbonation to drop back the pH, then sand filtration to reduce turbidity, ozonation as a secondary disinfectant, GAC, that's granular activated carbon. We really use it for polishing here at the plant. And then terminal disinfection is free chlorine. Next slide, please. This is a picture showing of the same plant. This is the equalization ponds. And I think it's an important thing to remember, thanks to the wisdom of the design engineers of this plant. If you're going to design a reuse plant, that reuse plant, especially if it's direct potable reuse, the way many systems work is you have to supply constant pressure. However, a wastewater plant works a little differently, right? You get that diurnal curve. In the morning, people wake up, the first thing they do is use the restroom and shower. So eventually, after a few hours, that wastewater ends up at the plant. And then in the afternoon, it kind of drops back down, right? Because people are at work. And then when people get off work, they go back home and they use water again. It's the normal natural cycle of our, you can call it our water use cycle. And so there's a diurnal curve where the wastewater plant is not treating water in a steady state condition. So having these equalization ponds allows us to continue to produce water at a constant rate. During the night, when less people are sending wastewater, we can fill up these ponds. And then during the day, when everybody's at work or using the water at home, we can feed off the ponds. So it allows the wastewater plant to continuously receive a constant flow of water into the plant, which means that a constant delivery of water can leave the plant. Next slide, please. This is a picture showing our granular activated carbon bed. In our industry, if you're going to evaluate advanced treatment, there's generally two schools of thought. One is a reverse osmosis based advanced treatment, and the other one is carbon-based advanced treatment. Both have advantages and disadvantages. We've been using carbon-based advanced treatment since 1985 here at the Fred Hervey plant. Next slide, please. These are a picture of our infiltration basins. Okay, so when the plant was initially designed, it included infiltration wells. Over time, these infiltration wells got plugged up, and the decision was made to move to these infiltration basins. Now, the geology and topography that we have here in El Paso, it allows us to basically do this. It's very simple. We discharge from the plant product water pump station at the plant. We send this water out about 2 miles into a relatively rural part of the city, and the water is allowed to just percolate through the ground. We're able to do that because the ancestral river that flows through El Paso used to flow on the east side of the mountains where these infiltration basins are located. So next slide, please, Rafael. I have a slide that actually shows a current view. I took this picture about a month ago. This is a picture of the infiltration basin. Environmentally speaking, it's very pleasant to look at. There's geese and ducks and birds and animals, and the water just simply percolates. It doesn't get very deep, maybe about a couple of feet, and then it will percolate into the ground naturally. On average, we're sending about 1 million gallons per day to recharge the Waco Basin in the northeast part of town. In the background of this slide, you can see the mountains here. The mountains separate El Paso in two halves, the east side and the west side. And so this is a very beautiful picture of our city here. Aquifer storage and recovery. Next slide. I have this slide up here because it may be a little difficult unless you have a large screen on your computer right now, but all those green dots represent our groundwater wells. We have roughly 177 wells. If you were to look at the northeast quadrant of this screen here, you would see a bunch of wells there. That's exactly where we have our Fred Hervey water reclamation plant. So on average, we're pulling about 35 to 40 million gallons per day of drinking water from those drinking water wells in the northeast part of our city. And we're happy to say that we're extending we're increasing the sustainability of those wells in the northeast because of our Fred Hervey plant. And this is all coming from raw wastewater delivered to the Fred Hervey plant, and it's produced to near drinking water quality. So we're very happy about that here in El Paso. Next slide. This map shows the 4 wastewater plants that are located in the city of El Paso. If I look in the northeast, you'll see that Fred Hervey water reclamation plant. That was the plant that I was just discussing. And then as you move from the northwest down to the southeast, that's the alignment of the Rio Grande River. Everything to the north of the river is El Paso, Texas. Everything south is Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. So obviously we share water resources between the United States and Mexico. And then just north, you will see the New Mexico border. So we're very much a borderland community here, sharing our water resources. Along the alignment of the river, you see our John T. Hickerson water reclamation plant, the Haskell R. Street wastewater treatment plant, and the Roberto Bustamante wastewater treatment plant. So I have this slide very intentionally. If you can, try to at least keep a mental note of where these plants are in comparison with the next slide. Yes, sir. Next slide, please.
There you are.
You might, there you go, sir. Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so this slide shows our drinking water plants. And if you look closely, you'll notice that the drinking water plants are I'll use the words in alignment with the wastewater plants. Okay, so we have our Upper Valley plant. If you go from north to south, our Upper Valley groundwater treatment plant, followed by the Robertson Umbenhauer water treatment plant, and then to the south, the Jonathan Rogers water treatment plant. The desalination plant is located roughly in the eastern northeast part of our city, but that source water is brackish groundwater. So here, there's a great opportunity, right? Because you have wastewater that's being collected by the collection system, then either a secondary or tertiary treated wastewater, which I shouldn't use wastewater, I should use resource recovery water, send that back to the river. Downstream, the drinking water plant picks it up. Okay, so here we have de facto reuse. And I was very happy to hear that Barcelona and I know many other places are doing this. This is a great way to augment your surface water supply, especially if your reservoirs are decreasing in level. However, I do want to make a very important point with this is that when you're talking about direct potable reuse and advanced treatment, it's important that we remember to adequately address what's called contaminants of emerging concern, right? Because you have an increased concentration of these personal care products, whether it's endocrine disruptors, whether it's there's a lot of the latest news articles and stories here in the United States especially have focused on perfluorinated alkyl substances, the PFAS compounds. I'm sure that's been making worldwide news. So it's very important to understand that when we're talking about de facto reuse, you're diluting the source water, in this case surface water, but it's important to address the removal of these contaminants of emerging concern. However, if we're in a situation, any system is in a situation where water is short, and we're estimating, the engineers and the leaders of the water industry are estimating only either as little as maybe 180 days of remaining surface of drinking water, or even 2 years or 3 years of drinking water left for the city. This is a great way to augment that and to kind of prolong the ability to keep sustaining your source water supplies. Here in Texas, we've had instances where a local city has told the regulators in our state capital, the local government, that they have less than 180 days of drinking water. And that is very serious. And the local government, the local regulatory agencies have had to speed things up through emergency authorizations. Nobody likes that. It's very stressful. The projects need to be done very efficiently and very quickly. However, if things are of that necessity where it requires emergency intervention, then direct potable reuse may be a solution to that. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that for everybody. Next slide, please. So what are the challenges, right? Angel, you're talking about wastewater, you're talking about drinking water, and I was working in the drinking water plants for 10 years, and now I've been transferred to the wastewater side of the house here for Paso Water, and I've been here for about a year at the wastewater plants. So it's true. Many of you probably have similar experiences. You know, the wastewater operators, they talk and think differently from the drinking water operators. And now we're talking about taking a secondary or tertiary treated effluent that's on the wastewater side of the house and sending it to drinking water. So how do the two mesh? Well, I like to remind everybody that's where reuse comes into play. That's where reuse is very important. So what are the challenges? It's important to understand both sides. The wastewater system, the plant, they don't want to spill. Don't get any wastewater on the ground. They also want to make sure that they meet their permit requirements. On drinking water, it's generally how to get the water to the right location, right? The water leaves the plant, you want to get it to the customers. And of course, making sure that drinking water quality is met, you need to meet all the primary standards, whether that's Environmental Protection Agency primary standards here in the United States, or international world standards for the rest of the world. And to make sure that that water supply is interrupted, right? Everybody appreciates waking up in the morning. The first thing they do is use the restroom, wash their face, shower. Whenever service has been interrupted, it's guaranteed that you're going to get a call from your customers to complain. Next slide. Okay, so what do the operators care about? Wastewater, meeting your discharge permit, and drinking water, right? We spoke about that, meeting your primary drinking water standards and making sure that the treatment techniques are done correctly to state or national requirements. Next slide. Okay, so this slide shows two photos. The photo on the left shows our raw surface water. And I used this picture intentionally because it was taken during a very hot time of the year, during the middle of the summer. And we were experiencing a blue-green algae outbreak. Very little rain, very hot temperatures. Here in Texas, it was roughly about 105 degrees Fahrenheit. 105 degrees Fahrenheit, I think that's roughly like high 30s, maybe Celsius, 38, 39 degrees Celsius, something like that.
Yes.
So I want to respect everybody, right? Everybody is in different parts of the world with units. So this is a picture of the raw surface water, and the drinking water operators, when they're doing their daily evaluation of the water, they're measuring things like turbidity, pH, total organic carbon, the salinity perhaps. For the picture on the right, that's primary clarified effluent at our Fred Hervey Water Reclamation Plant. And the raw water constituents that the operators are concerned about at the wastewater plant are total suspended solids, biochemical oxygen demand, and ammonia. So right off the bat, for the two plants, for the water coming in, you have two different sets of operators looking at two different parameters. So how do we kind of like get those operators to speak the same language? Next slide, please. Okay, there's also treatment differences, right? A wastewater plant, they have no control generally, unless you have equalization basins like we do at Fred Hervey plant. But generally speaking, the plant treats whatever comes in to the plant. If the local sewer interceptor collection system is bringing in 20 million gallons per day, the plant is treating 20 million gallons. It's bringing in double 40 million gallons, it's treating 40 million gallons. The plant has to make real-time adjustments to their return activated sludge, waste activated sludge, and their sludge quality as environmental conditions change, such as the weather, and as the diurnal curve of the flow comes into the plant. It's biologically treated. However, on the drinking water side of the house, you're relying a lot on chemicals, right? You're adding coagulants. You may use an iron or aluminum-based coagulant, perhaps a polymer. You may be using alkalinity adjustment, whether that's sodium bicarbonate or some sort of way to add back some alkalinity back, and of course disinfection, right? So two different ways to treat the water, one biological, one chemical, differences in treatment. Next slide. Okay, these are photos taken of the water now leaving the plant. The picture on the left shows the final effluent leaving the wastewater plant. The plant is also susceptible to plant washout if you have a sudden rainstorm, especially during our climate now with climate change. We have these unprecedented storms that are happening throughout the world. It seems like the pattern is we don't have enough water or we have too much water, right? So this wastewater plant is susceptible to washout or plant upset if you have industrial users that are discharging things they're not supposed to, perhaps heavy metals, and it just creates a massive microorganism kill at your plants. You lose all your mixed liquor suspended solids are gone. And of course, you're discharging back into the environment. So it's important to note that your pathogens, right, your E. coli needs to meet permit for the receiving stream to the environment. You don't want to have a fish kill when you discharge your wastewater or your final effluent back to the environment. The picture on the right shows your finished water, right? So two different ways to talk about the water, whether it's final effluent on the wastewater side, finished water on the drinking water side. Of course, in drinking water, no pathogens. The water needs to be safe to drink. That's priority number one. It needs to be odorless, pleasant tasting, and clear. If it's not those things, our customers will call and they will complain. They will be rightfully upset. So two different ways to look at the waters leaving the plant. Next slide, please. This graph here shows our surface water supply graph. The graph on the left shows Elephant Butte Reservoir. That's where the city of El Paso takes the water. And roughly we're about 22% full. I took this graph just a couple of days ago. And we're by no means out of our current drought. Whether the local news is stating that we have lots of water and we're going to have plenty of water for the year, I think it's important for us as planners and engineers and leaders in the water industry to understand, hey, what is the total capacity of our reservoirs? And what type of message do we want to send to our customers? The pie graph on the right shows the typical distribution of our source waters here in El Paso. And you can see we're generally well distributed. Groundwater is about 40%, surface water another 15%, 20%. We have some desalinated water in there, and we have 2 groundwater aquifers. So I believe this is a very healthy portfolio. You want to have that pie graph show nice equal distribution of different sources. You don't want to be dependent on one source, because if that source goes away, then you're in trouble. Next slide, please. How much is surface water? In our hottest summer months here, which are June, July, and August, we're very dependent on surface water. Without it, things get very stressful. So it's roughly 50% of our drinking water demand from surface water allocations. Next slide, please. This is a picture taken a couple of years ago from California. You see that river is at an all-time low. You see the bridge there. You can see the entire column there coming out of the abutment on the bottom, and then a little river boat there. These are pictures taken not too long ago. California did receive a lot of water, especially snow, the last couple of years. But that doesn't mean that things can go back to the way they are in this picture relatively quick. I know a lot of places in the world are dealing with this type of situation now. Next slide. So here we go. It's either too much water or not enough water, right? Here in Texas, Texas is a very big state, and our eastern portion of Texas received a tremendous amount of water. This is a picture taken just a couple of days ago from one of the local newspapers, and they had too much water, local flooding. A lot of schools, a lot of houses got flooded. So too much water, trying to balance it, especially with climate change. Next slide. So how's Texas doing? Well, we're always changing, probably like many parts of the world. This color-coded graph here represents the drought, the current drought conditions, and I'm comparing February with May. So if you look, this is the state of Texas. The red, the dark red, pink shows more severe drought, and then if you're in a location that's yellow or white, less drought. So El Paso's on that western corner there, so we're very much still in drought. We haven't gotten any rain, so no difference between the two images. But when you look at East Texas, it's a completely different story. So only God can bring us into the drought. Only God can take us out to the drought. As in engineers, we're trying to make sure that we manage the water when we have it, and then to basically preserve and conserve the water when we don't. Next slide. Changes all the time, right? This is our Elephant Butte reservoir capacity levels going back decades. And you can see there have been many times where El Paso has had very little surface water supply. And then some years in the 90s and early 2000s where we had an abundance and the reservoir was completely filled. Right now, we're only at 22% full. And look at the more recent trend on the right-hand side of the graph. We're very much within 10, 15, 25% full. We are not out of the drought by any means. Unlike East Texas, they may have their reservoirs full. It's important to convey this message to the local regulators. Next slide. Okay, I found this map, this image, and I want to give credit to my friends from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. These are all different global purified water projects throughout the world. So these water cycles are just incredibly interesting. You may have a tremendous amount of water in a very short period, whether that's a typhoon or a hurricane or some sort of monsoon. All your reservoirs may be filled up very short term, but you may have tremendous damages associated with that water. And there may be other locations around the world where there's sustained drought and no water. And even during the next wet weather season, there's no water. So it's important for us to share. And that's why I was very happy, Rafael and everybody in this agency, thank you for asking me to speak, because I definitely think we have a lot in common. throughout the world. All these stories are universal to all of us. So this just tells you what of the importance of a purified water system that's happening globally. Next slide. I found this from some engineers that came to El Paso about 2 months ago from Australia, and they were we were talking actually at the Fred Hervey plant about global purified water projects. So these are all projects that are either in design or being discussed at a conceptual level, or projects and plants that are actually in operation. And we have actually some experience now. So all over the world, right? Whether it's South America, I've seen some there. I've seen many in Europe, and even in places that I would never expect, like the Eastern United States, where typically they have a tremendous amount of surface water, or they're next to an ocean. In Virginia and in Florida, we all know about the record droughts that have hit Australia over the years, in Southern America and the Latin Americas and Africa. The first DPR project actually went into operation in Namibia, in Africa. So that's the very first one. You can read about it if you search on the internet, and they've been in production for many years, because that was their only way to keep supplying drinking water for their city, for their community. So this is just an example, a testament. Hey, if others have done it, why not us, right? Why can't we do the same thing? If it's been done safely, why not us? Next slide. Okay, so El Paso, I want to tell you about our direct potable reuse initiative here. We're about to break ground. We're starting construction this year for our direct potable reuse. It's going to be one of the first in the state of Texas, and there's a lot of excitement around this project. Of course, it's important to remember, especially to our customers, what is the source water? It's coming from a water resource recovery facility. It's no longer just considered wastewater. We are wanting to reuse that, but we have to take additional precautions, right? Safety first, health and safety first. That's the most important thing. Next slide. Here in El Paso, we have an enhanced source control program. We have sensors that have been placed in our local sanitary sewer collection system, and we're monitoring for things like electrical conductivity, pH, temperature. We want to make sure that our industrial customers understand that they have to follow the permit requirements. They cannot discharge illegally. It's very important that they understand that, because the water that's being discharged will eventually be used for drinking water. We don't want to have plant upsets. We have these sensors all over our city. Next slide, please. This is a conceptual location layout map of our direct potable reuse plant. The area in green is the wastewater or the water resource recovery facility. The area in blue is our existing surface water plant, and the area in red will be our advanced water purification plant. It's a water campus where water will be sent to the city, whether it's coming from the purified plant or the surface water plant. We all have it in one location. Next slide. These are the intentional steps that El Paso Water has taken over the years now. It's been over 10 years since we started this project, and we've taken a very deliberate approach, talking to the regulators, talking to our community. We brought in a panel of independent advisory technical experts all over, from academia to consulting to regulation, got them together in a room, and we talked about the project. We talked about what things we wanted to do, what things we wanted to avoid, all the regulatory hurdles that had to overcome, making sure that we met health and safety requirements, log reduction values, talking to our customers, making sure that they were comfortable, and making sure that the design had adequate amounts of safety factor associated with the treatment. Next slide. This is the concept. take roughly about 7 to 10 million gallons per day of Bustamante treated effluent, send it to an advanced purification facility, and leaving the plant with roughly 7 to 10 million gallons of water straight into the distribution system. Next slide. This is the general steps. We talked about health and safety of direct potable reuse. It's important to remember multi-barrier treatment. That's the key for any successful plant. We're using microfiltration, ultrafiltration for particle removal. RO will be used for dissolved solids and for salinity removal. Ultraviolet advanced oxidation potential, we talked about contaminants of emerging concern to basically mineralize those. GAC is really for hydrogen peroxide quenching, and then stabilization and terminal disinfection. When the water leaves the plant, it's important to remember it's purified. Everything has been removed. So you have to add back some alkalinity, some hardness. Here in the United States, I'm sure in Europe and many parts in Latin America, we don't want to have lead and copper hits, right? We don't want our water to be corrosive. That's very important. So we got to stabilize the water before it goes to the customer's tap. Next slide. So how do you do that, Angel? Make sure you check for lead and copper. No red water hits. Here in El Paso, we use a corrosion inhibitor. It's a 50% polyorthophosphate blend as our corrosion inhibitor. Next slide. What's the acceptable risk? Okay, here in Texas, we have a regulatory framework for direct potable reuse. You do source water characterization for your wastewater effluent. And then on the other end, you have your treatment goals, right? You need to make all the primary standards, make sure that your risk is an acceptable level. What is the gap in the middle? That's your advanced water treatment. Next slide. The DPR operator, we talked about, wastewater operators, drinking water operators, they talk different languages. You got to really bring them into the room. You got to have them talk to each other. That's really the way of the future. If you are going to decide to use potable reuse at your system, at your facility, they're the boots on the ground. It's very important that we educate them. Angel, how do we do that? Next slide. Fortunately, there's many resources out there now. I know the state of California has a program for licensing for advanced treatment. I found this yesterday on, you can look it up, the WEF, Water Environment Federation website. They have now advanced treatment training for your operators. I think getting dual licensure is a big part. I'm actually studying for my wastewater license. Now I have my drinking water license. I'm studying for wastewater. If you can get operators that are a hybrid, they understand both sides of the house, they understand the regulations, that's the best way, in my opinion, to ensure public health and safety for a reuse operator. Next slide. With that said, I know we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I want to respect everybody's hours, everybody's time. I mean, quiero decir algo en castellano, en español para la gente de América Latina. Gracias por su tiempo. Esta semana yo soy muy feliz porque tengo esta gran oportunidad para hablar con ustedes y estoy muy contento, muy feliz porque tengo este tiempo con ustedes y aquí en El Paso. Gracias por todo, gracias por su tiempo, gracias por escucharme con todo esto. Tengo una pasión de operaciones aquí en El Paso y es un gusto, un placer para hablar con ustedes ahora en España y en todo América Latina. Gracias por su tiempo, gracias por todo, gracias, muy amable. Thank you so much. And with that, I hope we have some time for questions. If anybody has questions, is that okay, Rafael?
Of course. Thank you to you, Angel. It's a real honor and a great pleasure to have you here talking to our members. Let me say that we share something with you. We are all members. We say in Spanish socios, but socio can be translated into English as a partner. We are not partners. We are just members of the Water Reuse Association. And it's a great pleasure to have you here so you can explain and share with us your experience, your concerns, your achievements. I think it's going to be a very good example for many of us. Starting with one recommendation, I will do my best to get 2 real good projects into the map that you showed us before. One is in Tarragona. We have a small purification facility. It's being used for industrial use, but it's purified water like the one you are producing. It's in Camp de Tarragona. And there is going to be another one, purification facility in Costa Brava. So we have to make sure those 2, I will request your help if necessary. Okay, Jose Miguel, please. We have questions. And of course, I would like to invite Dr. Mihaela Stefan. If you feel like you can do it, otherwise don't feel bad about it. We will wait for your input next time. José Miguel.
Rafael, voy a ir trasladándote las preguntas que nos han ido dejando.
Yo creo que si lo haces lentamente, Ángel
sí.
lo puede entender, creo.
Bueno, no obstante, si quieres traducirla, no hay ningún problema. Okay. Alejandro Cipizano nos pregunta si es posible conocer el precio del metro cúbico del agua en el Paso y qué pagan finalmente los clientes por el servicio, los que toman el agua, qué precio pagan.
José Miguel, para aclarar, ¿a qué agua se refiere? ¿Agua de abastecimiento o agua purificada?
Entiendo que la primera pregunta es saber el precio del metro cúbico que le cuesta a ellos, es decir, qué le cuesta a Ángel producir un metro cúbico y después qué pagan los clientes.
Okay. Did you get that, Angel?
I think so. He is the question asking for the cost of the water
production, and
the production.
Users, domestic users, how much do they pay for?
Okay, okay, sir. Okay, so here at Paso Water, I'm going to, it's very rare when I convert from gallons to cubic meters, okay. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to give you some examples first in gallons.
Okay. Yes.
So the cost for just pumping out water from a groundwater well here in El Paso is roughly about 60 cents. 60 American cents per 1,000 gallon produced, generally. Surface water is roughly 85 US, 0.85 cents per 1,000 gallon.
Okay.
Desalinated water is roughly about $1.40 per 1,000 gallons treated. Purified water is roughly about $4 per 1,000 gallons. So the conversion, right? 1,000 gallons is roughly about 4 cubic meters.
Right.
So that would be the general, just approximate conversion per cubic meter. Yes, sir.
Angel, let me ask you again for our audience. You mentioned before during your presentation the average amount of water, gallons per day that a person uses.
128 gallons.
Gallons per person per day.
Yes, sir. And that number we have worked on over the years, Rafael. It used to be higher. We're trying to bring it down to about 117. That's the goal. It's not easy. It requires many people to kind of change their usage, but that is the goal, to keep bringing it down.
José Miguel.
Sí. Isabel nos pregunta también Isabel Huacayo Aguilar, que si existe una ley para la reutilización de aguas residuales en el agua del grifo y que cuántas veces hay que renovar el absorbente en cuanto a, entiendo que carbón activo o similares, y cuál sería la cantidad necesaria, su costo, producción, regeneración, etcétera. En definitiva, que nos hablara un poco de lo que es el absorbente de
activated carbon.
De la potabilización.
Okay.
It's not too clear to me, but anyhow, the concern is how long does it take for this activated carbon to get exhausted? Okay. The period of renovation.
Okay.
And the cost.
Okay, sir. Okay. So here in El Paso, we have two surface water plants and one groundwater plant that use granular activated carbon, GAC. Mm-hmm. The GAC, we do a filter bed change out every so often. The surface water plants do it every 3 to 5 years, a change out. The cost will depend on so many pounds of carbon that you're replacing. So it depends on the physical dimensions of the carbon bed. To give everyone an idea, in El Paso, if I can remember, our budget, our annual budget for carbon change out is roughly about $800,000 to change out the carbon every year. However, if you're looking at direct potable reuse, many of the traditional treatment trains for carbon-based advanced treatment have two different types of filter beds. One is a granular activated carbon filter bed where the media is changed out. The other one is a biological active filter. If you're using a biological active filter, no change out required. You keep the same carbon because you're really relying on the microorganism population to do the treatment. So it depends which mode of operation you want to go. Here in El Paso, we do use granular activated carbon. We change out our filters roughly 3 to 5 years. You will see a difference in the removal of total organic carbon. That GAC is very good at removing total organic carbon the first few months. After that, the absorptive capacity of the carbon, you lose a little bit of it. The TOC removal is not as great as the beginning. Something to keep in mind. If it's biological, no carbon change out required.
Rafael nos pregunta también, Carlos Castaño, que si se mide la evapotranspiración en los estanques, si es relevante el medir la evapotranspiración en esos estanques y cómo se revisan y mantiene la información del agua subterránea.
Just an evaluation, if you do regularly evaluate the evaporation from these ponds, particularly the infiltration ponds, and also la segunda pregunta, José Miguel.
Sí, un segundito. Si revisan y mantienen, o cómo revisan y mantienen la información sobre el agua subterránea.
The follow-up of the underground aquifer. How do you do this follow-up concerning the amount of water, storage, or infiltrated? In other words, how to evaluate the balance of the aquifers.
Yeah. Okay. So here in Texas, I think on one of my first slides, I showed a general information on El Paso. Very little rainfall, only about 10 inches, which was, I think, 250 millimeters.
Yes.
In contrast, our pan evaporation is over 100 inches. It's about 110 inches of evaporation. So let me do the conversion here real quick. That's almost 2,800 millimeters of evaporation. So tremendous evaporation. So engineering, right? We're engineers here. You can design your percolation pond, your infiltration basin, with a smaller surface area, because the larger the surface area is, the more pan evaporation loss you have. So here in El Paso, we've sized these ponds. They're not very big. If I had to guess, maybe 500 feet by 500 feet. Not very big. That picture was a good picture of the pond. So make them, if you can, make them small, so you limit your evaporation. Now, we are limited on how much we can put back into the aquifer for recharge, but it's not because of the soil properties. We can actually add more. The challenge for us is getting more wastewater to the plants. That part of the city does not grow as fast as other parts. So we're trying to get more wastewater to the plant so that we can use it for aquifer recharge. But we have not been able to do as much recharge as we want. We want to do more. Now, there's a balance, right? I think it's good for everybody listening to kind of think about this, right? As our level of treatment goes up, so also does the cost of treatment, which is translated to the customer. Now, the customer gets their water bill and sees that the cost is going up. So now they're doing their part by conserving. And we're telling them, use less water. So conservation and increased water costs on the water bill for the customer is a challenge for us, because now there's less wastewater going to the plant. So there has to be a balance.
Good. Very good.
Rafael, nos dice Leonidas que tiene que ver con el ozono, que con los cambios de temperaturas tan grandes que tienen este tipo de instalaciones de ozono en el desierto, ¿cómo controlan todo lo que tiene que ver con pulsos de ozono, cuando el agua está muy caliente, en los PFAS, sus productos, etcétera? ¿Cómo hacen el control del ozono con las altas temperaturas que hay en el desierto?
How do you manage the operation of the ozone facilities or the ozone equipment, considering the high fluctuation of temperature in the area where you are, in El Paso?
Okay, we have two plants that use ozone here, and both of them use liquid oxygen. We used to use gaseous oxygen. You have to prep the air. It's very difficult. You have to use desiccant dryers, refrigeration dryers to prepare the air. It needs to be at the right dew point so that you can produce the ozone. We got away from that. We're not using the air prep dryers anymore. It's now liquid oxygen. So we have vaporizers. So the liquid oxygen is delivered by trailer truck, and we have vaporizers. There is some maintenance associated with the vaporizers. You have to make sure they do not freeze. But if you have the right engineering and maintenance, then even in very hot weather like we have here in El Paso, it's sometimes a challenge, but not something that cannot be overcome. It can be done very effectively.
Very good. José Miguel.
Sí, nos preguntan también, Rafael, que en algunos lugares de Estados Unidos el agua subterránea proviene de propietarios privados. ¿Quién sería el dueño de este agua de reuso y cómo se gestiona?
They may, some of the audience is thinking about what I usually say about California water rights. You remember, living in California, the water is owned by the owner of the land. Is the same water right regulation applying in Texas, or is it different?
Yes, sir. Texas is rule of capture. So that means Texas is a very private property land. Yes, our rules are very much based on private property rights. So if you own the property, you own the groundwater underneath it. You can drill a well, and if you find water, that is yours. The only caveat to that is if you are creating damages to your neighbor by pumping out that water. So groundwater is rule of capture. You own the private property. You can pump if you have groundwater.
So the consequence for you, probably this is our participant is concerned. You guys at El Paso Water purify the water, put it into the ground. Has anybody else the right to pump the water, or you have control about who is pumping water out of this water bank?
Yes, we don't have that problem. And the reason we don't have that problem is because the people that have their own private well, the water table is shallow. So they are pumping, whatever it is, 100 gallons per minute of water, 200 gallons per minute of water, whatever it is that they're pumped. It's usually a small pump because it's very expensive to drill and equip the well. And the deeper you go, the more expensive it is. Here in El Paso, a new well approximately costs $2 million American dollars. 2 million. So not many people can afford to have that type of well at their property.
Very good reason.
Yes.
José Miguel.
Rafael Miriam nos hacía una pregunta muy directa. ¿A día de hoy las regulaciones en Texas permiten la reutilización potable directa?
Direct potable reuse is currently allowed in Texas regulations?
Just recently, the local government environmental regulatory agency, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, published their regulatory guidance manual on direct potable reuse in April of last year. So barely 1 year with the regulatory framework in place. It is legal and it is allowed in the state of Texas. You have to, it's not an easy process to get approval for, but with proper planning and design, it is very possible, and Texas is very progressive in that. I'm very happy to work with the regulators here. They're very smart. In Austin, Texas, the TCQ, the folks in TCQ, they're very good to work with. We have very good relations with the TCQ. They're a very smart group, so they understand the big picture, and they are part of the solution. We are very fortunate to have regulators that are part of the solution, and they have that regulatory guidance out there for us to use. They're very good to work with. We have very good relations with TCQ.
I'm so happy to hear that. Let me say, El Paso Water is probably the leading agency in that direction.
Thank you, sir. There are other systems out there. City of Abilene, Big Springs, Wichita Falls, they've also done it very good. So we're very happy to be part of this socios, right? Members.
Rafael, nos preguntan también que cómo está siendo el grado de aceptación de la población y que si están haciendo campañas de sensibilización y concienciación.
How about the public? Is the public perception and acceptance favorable?
Yes. Yes, they are. We did quite a bit of public outreach and education for our customers to let them know that we are planning this project. That was probably the first thing we wanted to do, was outreach to our communities. So we invited them to community town hall meetings to get their input, to understand their concerns, to allow them the opportunity to ask us questions. So it's very important for any reuse project. Step number one, make sure the people are satisfied with the level of service, and make sure they feel comfortable with the initiative for direct or indirect potable reuse.
Thank you, Jose Miguel.
Sí.
Let me say, I wouldn't like to abuse the time of Angel because he is a public servant. He has to work and get his business done by the day. So let's make it probably present maybe one or two more questions, and then we can convene the session for him. José Miguel, sí. Dos preguntas más.
Dos preguntas más, perfecto. Nos preguntan desde San Juan, desde Argentina, que qué le recomendaría para poder empezar poco a poco con este reuso. Que tienen mucho interés, pero están muy lejos todavía.
From Argentina, the question is, what would be your recommendation for starting this pathway, this evolution towards purification?
Okay. Bienvenido a Argentina. You know, if a city or a system is going to decide to use reuse, it's very important to understand why. What is the driver? Why do you want to do it? If you have plenty of water, if you have a big lake or a reservoir, and you can treat the water very economically, it's very economically attractive, I would suggest no need to do it, right? If you have plenty of water and you forecast you have in the next 50 years plenty of water available, I don't think I would suggest that as an option moving forward. However, if you have some years where maybe your lake drops down below whatever percent you feel comfortable, below 50%, below 40%, whatever that number is that you feel comfortable, and you have no other way to supply drinking water for your customers, then start to plan it. Start to educate. I'll use a phrase, plant the seed, right? Plant the seed. Plant the seed, la semilla, right? Plant the seed in the mind of the local government leaders. Many places around the world have very little drinking water. Mexico City, they are also in an emergency with the drinking water in Mexico City. Very beautiful city, very big city. But right now things are difficult, right? Because they are understanding that the drinking water is, they need more drinking water. So you want to plant the seed. If you don't think you're going to have drinking water, you know, in the next, for sure, if you don't have drinking water coming up in the next couple of years, if it's less than that, you really need to accelerate the program. But even a few years out, you know, if you don't think you're going to have enough drinking water, start to plant the seed. There's many ways to do this reuse: de facto reuse, indirect potable reuse, or direct potable reuse. There's many steps. You do aquifer storage and recovery to bank the water when you need it, because you don't want to be caught in a situation where it's last minute and now you're in an emergency and now your only option is importation. You don't want to go there. The customers will be very upset, and they will lose confidence in the government, in the water utility. So you don't want that. You want to kind of plan things out, look out in the future, and use worst case, right? What about if we don't get the rain that we think we're going to get? What happens if the lake level goes down, we don't get any rain? Kind of plan for the worst, but hope for the best. That's how I would plan for that. That would be my response.
If I may complement your presentation, I would say, talk to your friends, talk to Angel Bustamante, El Paso Water, talk to Orange County Water District, other colleagues, other populations that are just on the same circumstances, and they are trying, testing, advancing alternative solutions. It's always good to know what other people may be thinking about. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's the main reason we are inviting you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You can share your experience. Okay, one more, José Miguel.
La última, Rafael. José Carlos Rubio nos pregunta si están produciendo agua para la industria a la carta y si esa agua está asociada o esa producción de agua a la carta está asociada con energías renovables en sus instalaciones para reducir los costes y la huella de carbono, pero principalmente si están produciendo ya agua a la carta para la industria.
The question is whether you are producing water for industrial reuse according, we say, a la carta, like when you go to the restaurant and you say, this is what I want.
Yeah.
In other words, adjusting to the requirements of the industrial user. And the second part of the question was the cost of that, José Miguel?
Sí, estimación de coste.
Yes.
Y si está asociada a renovables.
Oh, okay, yes, excuse me. And whether those initiatives, those purification or advanced treatment processes are associated more and more to renewable energy sources as to decrease the CO2 production with fossil fuels and also the cost of the energy input.
Okay. So, yes, currently we do not have a la carte, no a la carte here in El Paso. We do supply the plant product water that leaves the Fred Hervey water reclamation plant. A large percent of it, about 50%, is used for the local El Paso electric company for blow down water, for cooling water, for cooling their power plants. So we do use it for our industrial customers, but we do not a la carte. The same water that goes to the electric company is the same water that goes back for aquifer storage and recovery. I've heard of other systems that do that, but we do not do that here. Now, with regards to the second half of the question, that was very much a renewable resources type of question, and to reduce the carbon footprint. And there are many ways to do that. We do have some programs. We're looking at a biosolids master plan here in El Paso. Right now, we currently dispose of our biosolids in a monofill, and we are talking about reusing them for beneficial reuse for composting, so that you are just not disposing of that resource. And also, currently we flare our methane gas coming off our digesters. So we're looking at using that as a biogas fuel for on-site power generation to reduce the carbon footprint and get credit for carbon emissions. So there are many things that we're doing on both sides, the drinking water and the wastewater. I think it's good for the community and for communicating to our customers that we are environmentally friendly. That's part of the business we are in.
Excellent. Well, I think you have more than enough satisfied our desire to know what you are doing and how the difficulties and the challenges and the successes you are reaching. So we, again, thank you very much for your participation, staying with us, sharing for more than an hour and a half of your time, precious time. We will not ask you about the cost of that time, but we really appreciate your time. We also appreciate the company of Dr. Mihaela Stefan. So Mihaela, you already know what it takes to be a guest speaker at the ASERSA webinar. Next time you will be an advanced student, you can graduate with A+. And so at this time, we will say goodbye to our two guest speakers. Thank you again. You are more than welcome. If there is anything we can share with you, please let us know. We have quite a few members participating and have very good projects under the control and management. My insistence is they have to be able to write it down and to document it and to share like you did today. So all the best to you, and please come back anytime you have anything new. Like anytime you reach a new milestone in your development, maybe the day you are going to say, break the champagne bottle with your new facility, please come over. We will give you the floor so we can share with you the new experience.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angel, and see you soon. All the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Thank you for having me.
Good.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
José Miguel, hacemos nuestra breve presentación.
Sí.
Ok.
Adelante, Rafael.
Ok. Hablaré en español. Confío que Mihaela y Ángel puedan seguir. Básicamente, a petición de José Miguel y a petición de nuestros socios, hemos creído conveniente recordaros a todos los que nos seguís en el webinario, los socios, esta campaña de promoción de la regeneración que ASERSA viene patrocinando. En primer lugar, quiero recordar que la normativa aplicable a la reutilización del agua para riego agrícola, la normativa de la Unión Europea, está en proceso de valoración, en evaluación y adopción en las autoridades del gobierno español. Y las últimas noticias son que el 4 de abril el Ministerio de Transición Ecológica y Reto Demográfico celebró la primera sesión plenaria del Consejo Nacional del Agua. En esa reunión se presentó al Consejo para su dictamen el proyecto de Real Decreto por el que se aprueba el Reglamento de Reutilización de las Aguas. Se incorpora el Reglamento de la Unión Europea 741-2020 o 2020-741 y algunos otros usos. En definitiva, viene a ser como la adaptación o actualización del Real Decreto 1620. La versión del 22 de marzo de ese proyecto de Real Decreto se puede consultar en este enlace que indicamos aquí en esta presentación y también en esta dirección, en este enlace de la página web de ASERSA. Ahí lo encontraréis. Decir que ese Real Decreto y el reglamento de la Unión Europea, el reglamento está dirigido exclusivamente a los requisitos de calidad, de control y de gestión del riesgo para la reutilización del agua para uso agrícola. Pero el proyecto de Real Decreto incorporará otros usos. La buena noticia es que ese documento, ese proyecto de Real Decreto, incorpora la terminología que ya se venía utilizando en el Real Decreto 1620, en donde aparecen los términos de agua regenerada, instalación, en español utilizamos con frecuencia el nombre de estación de regeneración de agua, cuyas siglas son ERA, y aquí quiero hacer un énfasis especial de que la nueva directiva sobre depuración de aguas residuales incorpora la designación de tratamiento terciario a un tratamiento muy especial después del secundario destinado a eliminar nitrógeno y fósforo. De manera que conviene que todos nos habituemos a utilizar la palabra agua regenerada cuando el uso definitivo de ese agua sea su reutilización. Ni siquiera puede ser necesario que se hayan eliminado ni el nitrógeno ni el fósforo. De manera que tratamiento terciario, nitrógeno, fósforo, regeneración, adecuación a las normas del Real Decreto. Igualmente otro término, reutilización de agua regenerada, y para no hacerlo tan repetitivo, simplemente reutilización del agua. Y aquí es donde quiero hacer énfasis en la terminología que aparece en el reglamento de la Unión Europea 2020-104.1, donde se diferencia lo que es regenerar el agua, que es adecuar su calidad de un efluente secundario. La fuente de agua es un efluente secundario, se adecua la calidad de ese efluente secundario en una estación de regeneración de agua para un uso determinado. El reglamento únicamente afecta al uso agrícola. Y luego viene el término de reutilizar el agua, que es el suministro de ese agua regenerada al usuario, para lo cual en el documento del reglamento se habla de la red de distribución, del sistema de regulación, de almacenamiento y algún otro requisito. Y luego, como curiosidad, me he tomado la libertad de indicar aquí diversos nombres que este recurso no convencional recibe en el mundo. Y aquí tenemos pues agua regenerada, agua reciclada en California y en Australia, New Water en Singapur, Purified Water en San Diego, y aquí en Cataluña también en un momento se habló de agua nova, agua nueva o incluso agua kilómetro cero. De manera que aquí quizá convendría, como en otras ocasiones se ha hecho, convocar un concurso entre estudiantes de secundaria y que dijeran a ver cuál es el nombre, el público, en este caso joven, que es el que va a tener que lidiar con este tipo de retos, qué nombre se le ocurre y dónde está su imaginación. Decir que, una vez más, repetir que el reglamento solo afecta al riego agrícola con agua regenerada, que ya podemos anticipar, como comentaba Angel Bustamante, va a ser, en este caso, en el clima mediterráneo, una opción inevitable, que convendrá adaptarse a esa nueva estrategia vanguardista, proyectando una imagen favorable, porque ese agua regenerada, de acuerdo con el reglamento, será un agua de gran calidad, que hemos de documentar y comunicar a los usuarios, al público que va a consumir los productos agrícolas y a los agricultores. Y muy en particular, el gran reto del reglamento es el seguimiento y la elaboración, la aplicación y la documentación del plan de gestión de riesgos. Y aquí me he atrevido a indicar que ya existen documentos previos o similares, como son los Water Safety Plans de la OMS para la producción de agua potable. También están los relativos a la depuración, que nos han de servir como fuentes de inspiración. Y una recomendación muy personal mía de que a medida que vayamos aplicando ese reglamento, todos los retos, como por ejemplo nos presentaban los colegas de SAMUR hace unas semanas o ya hace unos meses, pues puede ser muy bien que algunas de las exigencias del reglamento, del plan de gestión de riesgos, sean exagerados, sean innecesarios, pero lo vamos a tener que documentar. No va a bastar con que nos quejemos de ello. Y ya llega, por último, esta campaña patrocinada por ASERSA, fundamentalmente para dejar constancia, para proyectar la imagen positiva y mejorar la percepción de la ciudadanía, la de esta campaña de patrocinio de ASERSA, que consta básicamente de dos elementos fundamentales. Un primero, que es un acuerdo de colaboración entre ASERSA y las entidades gestoras de esas eras, de esas estaciones de regeneración de agua, que no es ningún documento que vamos a utilizar para llevarles ante los tribunales. Es lo que se dice un pacto de caballeros, la expresión de una buena voluntad, de la responsabilidad del operador o de las entidades responsables y de su interés porque ASERSA les ayude a ser conocidos y a mostrar la bondad de sus actuaciones. Y a cambio, ASERSA se ofrece gratuitamente a regalarles un panel anunciador como el que les voy a presentar ahora y unos rótulos. Son unos paneles. Primero, el acuerdo es un documento muy, digamos, cuidadosamente elaborado para no introducir ninguna preocupación jurídica, pero si fuera así, incluso estamos de acuerdo en adaptarlo lo mejor posible para que nuestros colaboradores, las entidades que se presten a esta colaboración, se sientan cómodas y no se sientan atemorizadas ante posibles demandas judiciales. Y luego están los paneles. Aquí tienen un ejemplo. Tenemos hasta el momento 2 entidades que se han unido a esta campaña, que son Aguas de Sabadell, aquí en Cataluña, y ASERSA, que es la empresa suministradora de agua para los industriales de petroquímica, el polígono petroquímico de Tarragona, también en Cataluña. Ahí tienen el panel, es un panel de 80 centímetros de 80 por 60 centímetros, con unas imágenes que tenemos ya patentadas. Tenemos que ponerle ahí la R de patentado, con colores, reflejo de esa calidad de agua. Las tenemos en 4 lenguas, español, catalán, vasco y gallego. Y 2 formatos, el formato ese de color rosado para el agua regenerada básica y el color azul para el agua regenerada avanzada o purificada. Y tenemos aquí, por ejemplo, déjenme ver, el siguiente, el ejemplo de Tarragona, ASERSA, a la entrada de las oficinas, tienen los 2 paneles, el correspondiente a la Agencia Catalana del Agua y al de ASERSA. Y por último, pues tenemos unos rótulos autoadhesivos de este tamaño, de unos 18-20 centímetros de diámetro, que igualmente aparecen en las 4 lenguas y en los 2 colores, de agua regenerada de color rosado y agua purificada en color azul. Y esto es lo que quería mostrarle a todos nuestros asistentes y animarles a que se animen a formar parte de esta campaña. Ellos son los que mejor pueden divulgar y comunicar este mensaje.
Bueno, Rafael, pues nosotros también, para despedirnos, comentarte como siempre que vamos a seguir empujando esta iniciativa desde aguasresiduales.info, donde también en colaboración con vosotros hemos colocado una microsite. Cada vez que publicamos alguna información de ASERSA ya aparece esta campaña, también en la guía de empresas lo tenemos, y como te decía, seguiremos empujando con vosotros para que cada vez más instalaciones se vayan sumando a esta causa. Así que aquellos que estéis interesados, aprovechad el momento, poneos en contacto con Rafael, o si queréis con nosotros y os trasladamos el contacto de Rafael para que podáis poner esos carteles y que cada vez sean más las instalaciones en España que se vayan adaptando y colocando estos carteles. Así que nada, Rafael, agradecerle también a la doctora Mihaela su participación esta tarde, que sabemos que ha sido imposible, pero muchísimas gracias. Y hasta después del verano, donde volveremos a hacer otra vez la ASERSA 19, ¿verdad, Rafael?
Correcto.
Estupendo, pues entonces nos despedimos y hasta la próxima.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Gracias, doctor Mihaela Stefan, for your participation. Gracias, José Miguel. Gracias a todos los que han seguido el webinario, a todos nuestros seguidores, y a pasarlo muy bien. Hasta la vista.
Hasta pronto, Rafael. Gracias. Bye, bye.